The truth about the Egyptian pyramids. Who were the original builders of these pyramids? And this was concerning professors of Cairo University and their conference about this. The following statement was considered controversial or even shocking by some people, so it was tasked to post it only after thorough documentation. A. The conference and the statement. The head of Cairo's University Archaeology Department, Professor Dr. Ala Shaheen, has allegedly stated in a conference on ancient Egyptian science that there might be truth in the theory that aliens helped the ancient Egyptians to build the pyramids of Giza. I'm including this for you, the hieroglyphics at the Temple of Seti in Abydos, Egypt. One of the last pharaohs of Egypt, Nectanebo, said that this was never to be destroyed because this is where the original overlords of Egypt landed. And this is one of the hieroglyphics. We see helicopters, submarines, tanks, vehicles, things that they supposedly did not have at that time. But this is what, going back to what the professors were saying concerning the aliens helping to build the ancient Egyptian pyramids of Giza. And we know this is exactly what the Emerald Tablets written by Thoth the Atlantean tells us, that he was the person who built the Giza pyramids, and he was an Atlantean. Now, being further questioned by Dr. Marek Nowak, a delegate from Poland, as to whether the pyramid might still contain alien technology or even a UFO within its structure, Dr. Shaheen was vague and replied, "I cannot confirm or deny this, but there is something inside the pyramid that is not of this world." This is what he said. Now, we know from the Emerald Tablets written by Thoth the Atlantean, and I have a playlist for you there. In my playlist, you can hear what he said concerning their very advanced high technology. They had interstellar travel. They even had interdimensional travel. They can zip in from one dimension to the other. And he says that he buried one of his spaceships underneath the Sphinx in a plateau of pyramids in Egypt. Now, we don't know if he had other plateaus that he was to be credited for building, but we do have a Sphinx under, mysteries. We don't know what has been discovered underneath the great Sphinx of Egypt, of Giza. So he says, the professor says, I cannot confirm or deny the alien technology. There is something inside the pyramid that is not of this world, he said. Now, Dr. Professor Ale Shaheen, Dean of Faculty of Archaeology, Cairo University of Egypt. And the conference program had a lot of other archaeologists there. The first international conference on ancient Egyptian science. The conclusion, Professor Dr. Ala Shaheen exits. He is the head of Cairo's University Archaeology Department, and he attended the conference. Now, the facts about the Great Pyramid. 1. The Great Pyramid is constructed out of 2.5 million solid blocks, perfectly aligned. 2. The blocks weigh between 2.5 to 10 tons each, enough stone for the construction of 25 Empire State Buildings. 3. Initially, the Great Pyramid was covered in limestone. According to Mark Antonius, it was visible from, we're talking about the ancient Roman Empire. It was visible from 160 kilometers away and was shining like a precious jewel. 4. 150,000 stone blocks, 10 tons each, were removed in the 14th century for the construction of the city of Cairo. 5. We are taught that the Great Pyramid was built as a tomb for the pharaoh Khufu, but the modern discoveries show otherwise. Khufu's name was discovered in the so-called mortuary chamber inside the pyramid, but nobody speaks about it until 1837. One of the most important Egyptologists, Zechariah Sitchin, discovered that the writing is a fraud and was painted in May 1837. Everything began with a letter received from Alan Pittsburgh, who wrote that his grandfather witnessed the fraud. Because he objected to this counterfeiting, he was fired from the team and expelled from Giza. After examining the writing, Sitchin discovered that it is indeed a fraud, especially because the counterfeiters misspelled the pharaoh's name. Instead of Khufu, they wrote Rufu, Rhufu, instead of Khufu, which for the Egyptians would have been worse than taking the Lord's name in vain. In a Christian church, Sitchin concluded, this would have never happened in ancient Egypt, he said. 6. Khufu's alleged sarcophagus is almost half the size and carved directly into stone. Not only that the pharaoh could not fit into it, but it was also not suited for royalty. The so-called Queen's mortuary chamber is sealed by huge stone blocks that don't even contain a sarcophagus. The cover-up is even more obvious because the official story claims that the Queen was to be cremated after her death. This never happened in the entire Egyptian history because in order for royalty to become God, the mummification process was mandatory. So therefore no cremation. 7. No mummies were found in any of the Great Pyramids of Giza. What we learn today as facts can't even stand as substantial theories. Now the evidence the Great Pyramids had not been built by Egyptians. 1. Nobody knows what the word pyramid really means, and no roots for this word were ever found anywhere on Earth. 2. None of the historians' statements regarding the pyramids had been proven. 3. They say that the pyramids were built as tombs for mummified pharaohs, but not a single mummy was ever found inside the Great Pyramids. 4. The Egyptians had no knowledge of modern geology, and without this knowledge it's impossible for such a construction not to crumble or sink. In the modern construction industry, the engineers considered acceptable a sinking rate of 15 centimeters in 100 years. In 5,000 years, according to the official version, though there is evidence that the Great Pyramids may be older than 10,000 years, the Great Pyramid weighed 6,350,000 tons, that's 14 billion pounds, only sunk 1.5 centimeter in over 10,000 years. 5. In modern construction, it's an extraordinary achievement to keep each side of the building at a deviation of 15 centimeters or 6 inches, but the Great Pyramid has a deviation of only 0.75 centimeters. That's less than a quarter of an inch. This is impossible to replicate today with our entire modern technology. 6. The stone blocks are placed with a tolerance of 1,000 to 2,000th of an inch, so precisely that a razor blade does not fit between them. 7. The mathematicians say, during the construction of the pyramids, the Egyptians should have used several very advanced concepts and formulas which have allegedly been discovered only thousands of years later, but they were doing this anyway, in ways that we can't do today. 8. The geographical orientation of the Great Pyramid is probably the most amazing characteristic. Its sides are almost perfectly placed from north-south and east-west, being almost perfectly oriented on Earth's true north. How was a civilization from the quasi-Stone Age capable of determining true north? The true north is calculated on a map by using longitudinal lines and is different than the magnetic north indicated by compass. The true north is located in the Arctic regions of Canada and continuously changes its location depending on Earth's magnetic field. 9. The construction of the Great Pyramid shows extraordinary astronomy knowledge. The constructors could measure the day, the year, and could precisely determine the equinox. They knew that Earth is a sphere and knew how to accurately calculate its longitude and latitude. 10. The studies show that from the pyramid's top energetic vortex is emanated that extends in diameter the higher it reaches. There's a vortex coming out of the pyramid. 11. The study also shows that Egyptian Sphinx is at least 5,000 older than the history books say, which means that it's at least 10,000 years old, while others say it could be as old as 15,000 years. 12. In 1813, the astronomer Richard Proctor, Procter, discovered from ancient archives that the Great Pyramids were indeed aligned to the stars. It has been also discovered that the pyramids are highly receptive of radio energetic waves or even cosmic microwaves. Above the so-called mortuary chamber inside the Great Pyramid, there are 5 huge granite tiles placed in layers with spaces between them. The layers end with some kind of a V-shaped roof pointing up. And you see them here right above the king's chamber in the diagram. 13. According to the official version of history, the construction of the Great Pyramid alone lasted for 20 years. The slaves worked in groups of 100,000 and were replaced every 3 months. For the Great Pyramid to be constructed in 20 years, one stone block weighing 2.5 to 10 tons each should have been placed every 3.5 minutes, working non-stop 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's an absurd statement because we don't have this kind of technology even today. 14. The pyramids were constructed in the 4th Egyptian dynasty, which was not very aggressive in the first place and didn't even have a very powerful army. But even if it would have been a great military power, the necessary number of slaves could not have been met on an 8,000 kilometer, 5,000 mile radius. 15. The corrupted historians want us to believe that the slaves lifted the huge stone blocks on ramps constructed around the pyramids and that the ramps were demolished afterwards. Actually, the effort to build this gigantic ramps would have been greater than the construction of the pyramids themselves. The debris from the Great Pyramid alone would have been of nearly 300 million tons, but where is the debris? This enormous quantity can't be hidden in the desert. 16. These historians also want us to believe that the massive stone blocks were carried to the construction site on massive rolling logs. The only available trees in ancient Egypt were the date palms, but these were the primary food source. It's very improbable that the Egyptians would have cut main food source for their purpose. The log imports are excluded. At least 25 million logs would have been needed, which is way above the entire Egyptian import industry of any kind in their entire history. We should also take into account that the roads were made of stone, which would have made this task impossible. But even if the Egyptians would have tried this, the massive stone blocks would have crushed the logs, of course. The Egyptians were not the architects or the constructors of the pyramids. 1. It was also suggested that the stone blocks were in fact constructed from a superior type of concrete, not carved from stone. So in other words, the blocks were not stone, but a superior type of a brick made of concrete. 2. The Great Pyramid is considered to be the most important construction in Earth's history, but there is not a single image, drawing, artifact, or inventory list, no registry or depiction to tell of its construction. The Egyptians left us 3,000 years of written and photographic history covering their entire history, but nothing about the pyramids of Giza. So why is that? 3. But if the Egyptians are not the constructors of the pyramid, then who is? In 1976, during Viking's mission to exploring Mars, NASA received some shocking photographs. The first one showed a humanoid-shaped construction which stretches for miles. NASA refused to photograph the area again, and only after much pressure agreed to take more photographs. In 1976, Viking sent a second photograph showing the same structure, but from a different angle, in the vicinity of the face of pyramid, now called DNM Pyramid, appeared. And as always, NASA rushed to deny, telling us that what we see it is an optical illusion. Much later, when technology advanced, a special program was used in order to three-dimensionally shape the picture. The Martian face is 460 meters higher and above 1.7 kilometers long. The study of other pictures close to the area show multiple pyramids. This area received the name the Sidonia Complex. Now let's remember that even in the Emerald Tablets, written by Thoth the Atlantean, and from what I remember, there's so much in there, and I have a playlist for you to listen to. It's really worth it because it's a very good discussion topic. He said that there was a general that was exiled, because a lot of Atlanteans were going against divine commandments because they were misusing their advanced technology to the detriment of humans. He said a general and his entourage were exiled to the planet Mars, and that the exiled general was buried under a face, and his entourage of generals were buried under pyramids next to him, and that this face and the pyramids were placed on Mars, what we call today the Cydonia complex, so that when the Atlanteans were flying around Mars, they could very easily be able to see where the exiled general's tomb was. Okay? So he wrote this in the Emerald Tablets thousands of years ago, before we took this image on Mars. Now, in time, multiple studies show that the Giza pyramids are in fact a replica of those from Cydonia complex, and both a replica of the stars, or even our Sphinx is placed in the same position to our pyramids as the Martian Sphinx is placed to the Cydonia pyramids. Going even further, the study shows that the placement of the Giza complex on Earth is on the same coordinates as the Cydonia complex on Mars. But before I forget, one of the videos, very beautiful videos with Graham Hancock and other researchers, state that in Egyptian language, Mars actually means Cairo. So this planet Mars in Egyptian language actually means Cairo. Isn't that something? Now, in time, multiple studies show the Giza pyramid, in fact, replica of the Cydonia complex. Now, more evidence of, number 4, more evidence of the connection between Earth and Mars is the city Cairo, Egyptian's capital. Cairo is placed right next to the Giza complex. But what does Cairo mean? You'll be amazed. Cairo is a Seleucid Arab word, and it means Mars. Okay? And this is by Alexander Light, Humans Are Free, and I'll leave links below for you for this. Please leave your comments, and thank you for your support. Kindly support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support, and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.